good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another exciting Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants broadcast with us here. My name is Jesse, and if you're new to the work that we do, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. Now, you're catching us in a very special day for a number of reasons. Number one, today really epitomizes the best of what we do. We started live in the Galapagos on a beach with marine iguanas. That was a wild way to start the day. We just wrapped up in a Parks Canada series with our friends all the way up in Nunavut, which is about as far removed as you can get from the Galapagos Islands. And we're wrapping up with a really special broadcast today as part of another epic series that we've got this week, which is Our Changing Planet 3. Now, in collaboration with the amazing folks at Environment and Climate Change Canada, we've been featuring their incredible stories all year long with their scientists, their storytellers, and more to highlight everything from water and air safety to biodiversity conservation and beyond. It was such a great series to kick off in November that we had to do another one in February and now another one in May. We're just bringing on all the amazing scientists. So a big thank you to all of them for joining us in what has been a very special year. Now, just yesterday, we wrapped up talking about frogs. That is on our YouTube channel in the Changing Planet 3 series if you want to check it out. But today, we are going to talk about bright lights, big cities, and birds on the move. Migratory birds making cities better for them so that we are friendlier to our feathered friends. And it is the first time ever in one of our descriptions of a program that we've had nanotag backpacks, which certainly just sounds like a lot of fun. So I'm going to turn you over to research scientist Barbara Frei. She's going to take us on a journey to learn all about the amazing work we're doing to conserve birds on the wing. And so without further ado, I'm going to stop talking. Barbara, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Jesse, and hi, everybody. So my name is Barbara Frei, and I'm going to talk to you today about birds on the move. But before to begin, just to place you, hello. I am right now speaking to you from Canada and within the province of Quebec, so bonjour. And I'm located on the island of Montreal, which is that little yellow star at the bottom of that red province of Quebec. But of course, English and French are not the only two languages that we speak here in this country. And in fact, there's 70 indigenous languages that are spoken from coast to coast to coast across this country, as well as many other languages. But I want to bring this up because where I live now on the island of Montreal is actually within the lands of the Kanien'kehá:ka, or the Mohawk people. And in this area of Djangdjangwe, of the island of Montreal, I can also say to you, Kwe Kwe, or hello in Mohawk. So a little bit about who I am. Well, I'm a scientist. I'm a mother to 2 young kids. I'm a mentor, which means part of my job is teaching and leading young scientists, mostly graduate students at universities, to perform their own science. I'm a field ecologist. I'm a nature lover, which means I get to spend a lot of time outside, both doing my work and just for fun, and so much more. So a little bit about what does actually the term research scientist at Environment Climate Change Canada mean? What is it, some of the things that I actually do in my job as a scientist? Well, I consider myself a mix between a bit of an explorer and a detective, which means that people come to me with questions or needs, and I provide the science and data to answer those questions. And just how many questions can I get? Well, I can get a lot, which makes my work both really interesting and means I have to work with a great team of people to come up with some of these answers. So now I'm going to ask you a question, because right now I'm talking about birds on the move, but I also want to talk a little bit about nature in cities. So I'm going to ask you to think about a park, a playground, a tree, a backyard, or any bit of nature near you or where you live, and how it's important to you in different ways. Have you thought about that? Also asking you, oh, there you go. Also, what changes would you make? How would you feel if it was gone? Jesse, I don't know if it's possible to have students answer some of these questions. I'm happy to hear them. Well, for example, this is a green space right behind my backyard, which I can go into, and that's my daughter. And I look at this place, and when I go there, I not only listen to the birds and I look at the frogs, but I enjoy that I can walk in these areas.
I was just saying, we actually do have some clouds. I was just going to say, my computer did like a little ring of death when I tried to bring myself back in there to answer your question, so sorry for the delay. Our GEMS World Academy friends definitely have some answers. You guys all have your hands up, so if you want to flick on your mics, We'd love to hear from you. For me, while we're waiting for your mic to come on, I live in Corner Brook, Newfoundland. I'm on a beautiful area called the Stream Trail. I go there all the time to see all the crows and ducks. We have a swan that's in the pond there regularly. It's just a beautiful, beautiful area with a couple of waterfalls too. So it's really special to have that nature area close to home. Our YouTube class is saying how sad they'd be if the nature near them was gone. But our Chicago folks, what do you guys think?
I would make changes by picking up the trash in my park, because in Chicago there's a lot of littering, and if nature was gone, it would be kind of empty and sad.
Yeah, those are great answers. Thank you so much for sharing. Sorry for the delay, folks. And if you have any more options, we'd love to hear from them later. You can always email us if you have any thoughts on local nature areas. We'd love to connect. But Barbara, I'll go back in the background. Take us home.
And don't worry, I have more questions for you guys. So these are great things. Like you mentioned, you want to clean it up. You want to keep it clean, and it would make you sad if it's gone. We feel happier when we're in nature because of all the things that you see. And Jesse mentioned he loves seeing some of the crows and the things in this areas. So some of my work, if I can put essentially what I'm trying to do in one sentence, I'm trying to fill the need for the science we need for the cities we want. And when I say cities, that can mean a big city like the skyline of Montreal in the background, to any size place where people live. We want it to be a happy, healthy place. And while, full transparency, I'm going to be talking a whole lot about birds today, that's just a piece of what we need our nature and our cities to do and the different ways we need to manage them. So there's things like climate change, mitigation, and that means mitigation is solving a problem. So we know climate change is happening in our cities, and the more trees we have in our cities, the more they can absorb the carbon. And it benefits us in so many different ways. Those trees also suck up the water when there's heavy rainfall, so we don't have floods happening. It makes us nice and cool when we sit under them on a hot sunny day. And we need to make sure that everybody, no matter where they're from, how much money's in their bank account, or where they live, can have access to that nature. But sorry, I'm going to bring it back to birds. And you might be asking, okay, Barbara, but why birds? Now, I'm going to help you count the ways that they're awesome. But just to get a bit more answers, why do you think that birds, like many other creatures, but specifically birds, may have an important part to play in our ecosystem and in our environment?
Ooh, what an interesting question. We asked this yesterday with our frog program, and it was really cool to see the kids' answers. So please, if you're on YouTube, share in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. Why are birds important? And our gems, folks, I will come back to you live. If you want to flick on your mic, you can keep your microphone on the whole time, I promise. We won't hear you until we bring you in. But if you have any thoughts about why birds are super cool and important, let's check in. Hi, guys. Yeah.
Let's do it. Elizabeth. Real loud.
I think birds are important because
Loud and proud.
I think that birds are important because birds
You forget?
yeah.
All right,
That's okay.
silent.
There's so many reasons.
Gonna move up to the camera.
Get in
Move
front
over.
of me. Oh. I think birds are important because they take dead parts of trees off of trees.
That's a really good one. The other day, we had one that also applies, which is eating bugs in our class on YouTube. Eating bugs, food for other animals, pollinators, and they spread seeds. These are all really good answers, guys. Way to go.
Yeah. And honestly, I didn't have that on my list, but taking dead pieces of trees is totally right. They're engineers. They're kind of helping those trees fall apart when they start dying and bring it down. So totally right answer. Some other pieces, they help basically plant our forests by eating the seeds and the fruit. They gobble those up, they replant them with a nice little package of poop, which is full of nutrition, and they help rebuild our forests that way. Some birds are pollinators, just like our bees and our butterflies, and help create fruit. They help regulate insects. So swallows eat thousands of mosquitoes. Some of their woodpeckers eat ants, so they help regulate those insects in the system so they don't become pests. And like somebody spoke, it would make you sad if you didn't have nature and you maybe didn't hear birdsong anymore. We've proven with science that your brain is healthier when it's around nature and when it hears bird songs. So you're like, okay, birds are awesome. But what about other wildlife? How can we connect birds to other wildlife? Well, birds are also great bioindicators for diversity, which means that if we have a lot of birds around, it's a way of telling us that there's other animals around, whether it's mammals, whether it's insects, as well as plants and ecosystem health. So there's this great quote that says, birds are indicators of environment. If they are in trouble, watch out. That means we're going to be in trouble soon. And unfortunately, our migratory birds are in trouble. If you look 50 years ago, and if you would have looked at a bird feeder that would have had 4 birds, and you look at it now, one of those birds would be missing. So one of every 4 birds is missing. Not a species, but just the number of birds we have around. And that adds up to a number that's really hard to imagine of 2.5 billion birds have been lost in 50 years, which is another reason that we need to continue to protect them so they can fill in all those important pieces of the environment that they play. You're like, okay, I'm convinced. Birds are awesome, they're important, but you're talking about normal birds. What about city birds? They aren't that special, right? So I'm going to ask any of you, what do you think of as a city bird?
Ooh, well, I mean, in the picture, we've got one that might be a good option for our classes. For me, I'm trying to think of another bird that I think of city bird. You know, I often see, like, they're a forest bird too, but chickadees are everywhere. So I'm in a city, I see chickadees constantly. That in my mind is a city bird. A robin is also a city bird. Our GEMS crew, what do you guys think of city birds?
Ione, waiting. You stand up.
You mean one that I know?
Yeah,
If you live in, yeah, go for it. If you've seen it.
I agree with the picture on the screen of the pigeon.
Pigeons, yeah.
Pigeons, yeah.
Nice option, guys. We've got seagulls and crows coming in on YouTube, so a bunch of really city-ish birds. Very cool.
Yeah, that's great. And those are definitely birds you can see in cities, but I'm going to tell you a little secret. What if I told you almost any bird can be a city bird? Yep, some of the rarest birds you could see in a city, and I'm going to show you why. I'm going to tell you the story about bird migration and cities. So this is why when we talk about urban areas, so that's where we have our cities, are important for birds. Now, this is a picture and it's showing mostly parts of Canada, but it definitely applies to other pieces of North America. And in Chicago, this really applies to you guys because you are right in those middle of those beautiful lakes, and that's where a lot of birds are found when they migrate. So each year, up to 5 billion birds migrate from the boreal forest. So that's that dark green area and other northern breeding areas to overwintering areas. And the reason they go up there to breed is because there's so many insects. It's so rich in food that they go up there for the breeding time to make their nests and feed their babies. But then twice a year, as they go down and as they go back up, they move through some of our busiest areas where it comes where people live. That means that these birds depend on the nature that we have in cities to stop for a rest, or sometimes even to spend the winter. Now, many of our Canadian and our US cities are what are called migration hotspots. So a hotspot is when you have a lot of something. And again, Chicago, you guys are definitely in a migratory hotspot, one of the biggest in North America, I would say, which makes the green and the nature in your cities really important for birds. But they face many threats, and this can include light. So light actually makes birds more likely to come to cities, but when there's too much light, it can actually disorient or confuse them because they're just used to following the moon, and now suddenly there's more bright lights around. This means they can also collide with windows. This is a huge problem, as well as one of the number 1 and number 2 killers of birds during migration in these areas is cats. So our kitty cats, and I'm a big cat lover, but cats, unfortunately, that's their nature. They like to hunt, and they can go out and hunt birds. And each cat can kill 5 or 6 birds every night. So keep your kitty cat inside. It's actually safer for the cat as well. And be careful with your windows. So we need our nature in our cities. really important during this time. I just say, think that you're going on a big, long family trip and you're settled in your car and you have your favorite McDonald's, or up in Canada, maybe a Tim Hortons that you're going to stop at. And you're counting on it. You need to maybe go to the washroom. You're really hungry for a snack. You want to stretch your legs. And you go to that place you always stopped on that family trip, and suddenly it's not there anymore. That's a big problem. So that's why the nature in our cities are really important for these tired birds when they migrate through. So now that I've told you a little bit about how awesome birds are and how important cities can be for birds, especially migratory birds, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I go out and research birds to answer those many questions that get asked of me. And for example, here's some of the people I work with, 2 students, Chloe Cal and Sofia Montantor Simons, which are researching birds in Montreal parks just last summer with me. So I'm going to show you 2 different questions and talk a little bit about the data that I need to find in the information. So question 1, the cities come up and ask these kind of questions. Well, how can we make sure that we have nature that is useful for both birds and people? So one of the things that I need to figure out is what kind of birds are in cities, are in their parks. Maybe the different species, maybe the different numbers. So if I pose this to you, question, how would you go out and help fill this data need? How would you go out and solve this puzzle? If I'm asking you how many birds are in city parks?
Yeah, we've actually been covering a lot of this in our broadcast lately in terms of how citizens or how communities can get involved in finding data about things. And in general, one of the big options is with your phone. So we're getting this on YouTube as well. But really, if you just take pictures and you have the appropriate apps and things to share that data with scientists, it's really, really easy to get involved. Right now, it's Backyard Bio and our month of getting kids out exploring the natural world. iNaturalist is a really great app for this. Seek is a great app for this. eBird. Birds particularly have a lot of apps associated with them where you can just submit your picture, submit your bird call, and you're helping real scientists like Barbara. So I think that's a very good answer. Observe and count them at feeders is coming in on YouTube as well. Very good, guys.
These are awesome answers. And I'm actually using that data. I use eBird data. I look at iNaturalist data. I am standing on the shoulders of so many people that are going out there and helping find these answers. So totally. So birds have 2 ways that we can collect the data. And Jesse mentioned you can go out, you take pictures. So you find them, you look at them, you can identify them. That's a picture of a blue jay. There's no other bird in this area of North America that has a bird that looks like it. It's blue, it has that nice sharp beak. If I see that bird, I'm going to know it's a blue jay. Take a picture of that bird, sometimes even on the camera of your phone. There's definitely things like iNaturalist and Seek that can help you identify it. But birds also have a different way that they can give you clues, even if you never see them. And there's a great app called Merlin on your phone that can help you with that. And that is their song. A bird's song is a little bit like its fingerprint. It's unique to that species, and you can identify it. So people like me, called birders, have learned these songs. And if I go outside and I close my eyes, I can count the number of different species that I hear without even seeing them. So I could go out and collect that data. But 2 problems. 1, I want to be in a lot of different places at the same time, and Montreal traffic is bad. So I would never make it to all the different places I want to get to. And 2, this one's not necessarily something that would be that impossible to do, but birds tend to sing earliest in the morning, which means that for surveying them or going out counting them, the best time is to go half an hour before the sun comes up to 4 hours after, which means I would be pretty tired a lot of the time if I'd be doing that as much as I need to. But instead, there's some new technology. That little green box in the picture behind me, that's called an automatic recording unit, or an ARU. And if you open up that box, this is what it looks like. It's got a bunch of batteries, a little computer, which will tell it when to turn on and off, and a microphone. And from this, like this morning when I was cozy in my bed at 4:20 a.m., 44 of these guys all over Montreal started up and started collecting data on birdsong for me. And just like I told you, bird songs can almost be like a fingerprint. So not only when you record it like this can you hear it, you can actually see it in something called a spectrogram. And that's going to help me be a detective. And even though I wasn't there, I can look at my data and I can figure out what birds were up at 4:30 in the morning singing their little hearts out. So Hopefully this will work now, Jesse, but I'm going to try to play this song. You're going to see, oh yeah, let's crawl right across your fingers. Even if you don't, we're going to, if you can't hear it, you should be able to see that spectrogram go around and you can see the different songs and you can, well, let's see. I'll start it. So hopefully you're hearing what I'm hearing, which is each time you see one of those kind of patterns, you can hear a different bird song playing. Is it working, Jesse?
It is working brilliantly. Couldn't hear it better if we tried.
Wow. Sorry?
Oh, I just said it was working brilliantly. It's like we're right there in the forest. It's amazing.
Yeah, so you didn't have to wake up too early either to hear birdsong. So now I'm just going to take a snapshot of that. And I'm going to ask you, how many different species do you think is singing? But I'm going to also give you a hint. Every time you see a mark doesn't mean it's necessarily a different species, because birds sometimes have two parts of a song or sing one song a little different than another part, just like when you're singing a Christmas carol. Sometimes you sing high and sometimes you sing low. But what is a guess in that one little clip of just a couple seconds? Do you think how many different species of birds you might be singing there?
Ooh, Gems World Academy. How many kinds of birds we're singing? What do we think? You can just yell it out.
2 or 3.
7. 2, 6,
Whoa.
7, 4. Oh, so many.
All right. So if you be counting it, right? You can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But some of those birds are singing a little up and a little down. So I'm going to show you something. That one there, that's called a red-eyed vireo. It's a bird that's often up in the treetops, so it's really tricky to see, but it has a song that you can tell, and it's kind of a cheeky bird. So it goes, here I am, where are you? Here I am, where are you? It doesn't actually say that, but it kind of sounds like it. So this part is it's, here I am. This part is it's, where are you? So that's the same bird. The second one here is this yellow warbler, which is this lovely little yellow bird that just looks like a jewel that hides away in the bushes. And it goes, sweet, 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 I'm so sweet. And then this big noisy one, of course, comes from the littlest bird in this group called an American redstart. And I don't have any moniker for it or any words associated with the sound, but it just makes this really loud tick-a-tick-tick-tick-tick sound. So there might have been one more snuck in there, but these are the 3 that I can clearly see. So ready for a challenge? Because sometimes it's not that easy. Let's listen to this next one and think about the forest that you're in now. Jesse, you better be counting.
Oh, yeah. 1, 2. It's so many birds. It's like a cacophony.
I think you're muted.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
When your audio's on, you can't hear me. Go to the next
Okay,
slide.
so yeah. So this is really tricky, right? It's not always that easy. That was a really noisy one. We couldn't look at that one very easily. So that's not always that easy. So shout out to Superstar Birder Research Tech Anna Morales that works with me. Now, we're working to have computers and artificial intelligence be able to kind of help us understand. So poor Anna doesn't need to sit at the computer for months and months with her big headphones listening to these songs. As of right now, there's no computer and no algorithm that's as good as Anna, but we're getting pretty close, which makes our work a lot easier as detectives. Another thing we might look at is how do people in park influence birds? Basically, we want these beautiful areas like the Baudelaire Park here in Montreal, which might look similar to some of your parks in Chicago. That's a trail that's great for walking on, biking on. There's summer camps there, but it's also home for birds. So some of the managers want to say, well, how can we make sure that birds are okay here? So some of the way that we collect data is by actually looking at their nests. So there at the bottom there's Lauren and Mackenzie that spent all summer looking for nests. And unfortunately, you just got to get up early in the morning. There's no machine or computer algorithm that's going to do that for you. They Watch birds. They follow them to their nests. They're like detectives finding their clues, finding these beautiful nests like that blue robin's eggs, and then following to see how those babies might survive. And some of the work that they found said that those parks, even though there's people walking and biking on those trails, can also just be as good for the birds nesting far or close to trails. So there's win-wins possible. We can have parks that are great for birds and people. So my second question is, how much time will birds spend in cities during that lifetime? And we're getting close to those nanotag backpacks I talked about, Jesse.
Ooh.
So
Go ahead.
sorry. So one of those questions I can ask is, how long are birds spending in cities in migration? Now, if I go and listen to a bird or put out those radios, I can understand how many species are, but I can't follow a specific bird to kind of answer that question, which is a really hard time. Now, for over hundreds of years, people have done what's called bird banding. And I'm also a bird bander. So I capture them with these very special mist nets. And I do this with lots of important permits and practice. So it is legal. You can't just go and do that in your backyard because, of course, you don't want to hurt the bird. But we do this with scientists. And we collect data and we give them a little bird bling. You can see in orange there, there's a bird band around it. And if you want to learn a bit more about bird banding, which I'm sure has been featured on Explore by the Seat of Your Pants before, but there's a really great 10-minute video. You can check us out on YouTube. If you just type "Studying Birds at the McGill Bird Observatory," you can see that all there. But I'm not going to talk just about the banding part, because the banding part means after we let them go, we might not see them again. This is when I get to put on a tiny little nanotag backpack. So it's about the size of my pinky fingernail, and you can see that in my hand at the bottom. It's a little backpack that we put on the birds. Again, we make sure that it's scientifically proven not to hurt them, and I have lots of practice and permits to let me do this. But that means I can follow that individual bird and figure out where it's going. And I can do that two ways, one of two ways. One is that first picture of me there holding what's called a Yankee antenna, which basically means after that bird is let go, every day I run around in the forest trying to find that bird, because I'll get a signal to that Yagi antenna, which sounds like a little dee-dee-dee, dee-dee-dee. And the louder it gets, the closer I know the bird is. So I follow that bird every day to see where it's going. But there's a second way that we can do this. And that's because with these special nanotag backpacks, there's scientists all across North America that are putting out these towers. So big versions of the antenna that I'm holding that picks up that information. So again, I can be sleeping in my bed and yawning, and that bird, which might be flying across the country, is pinging off all these different antennas, and I can get that data later. So one part is these chasing the birds. For example, just to show you, this is a northern cardinal, which is also might be a city bird that you see, a beautiful red bird that you might see at your feeders. So just even if you think, well, that's not really a migratory bird, how much time is it spending in cities? This is my student Anne-Marie, which spent her whole winter chasing cardinals around. And you might be able to see animated on those maps in different parts of our city of Montreal, all those different lines are different birds moving all around. And they're using quite a bit of those cities. But on a bigger piece, if we look across a large part of the country, each one of these colored lines represents a different species that you see on the right that I tagged just this last fall. So from September to November, I put those tiny little nanotag backpacks, I sent them on their way. And through that kind of magic of this shared network of these towers pinging up all those signals, just like a cell phone or something, or your radio might pick that up. These birds, I could see them as they moved. So there are all the birds leaving the city of Montreal, where they already spent 2 weeks in that city. And there you see them go all across the eastern coast. So they're hitting up potentially Baltimore, New York, big parts of New Jersey, Washington, D.C., Boston. So those birds might have all been city birds for a little while. So some take-home messages now. I want to talk about, again, birds are declining. We got to protect those amazing birds. There's several simple actions you can see on the left-hand side, and you can visit the 3billionbirds.org to learn more. But some things I want you to remember. We want nature in and around cities for many, many reasons. Like you said, it makes you happy. It makes you feel good for so many different reasons. Birds play an important role in the ecosystem and for people, and they're just darn super cool, just like frogs do, but birds can fly. almost any bird can be a city bird. Not only those crows and gulls and pigeons, but especially during migration, for a couple days or a couple weeks, twice a year, any bird can be a city bird. And there's all this new technology, from the little machines that are listening to those nanotag backpacks, is helping us understand where and how long birds are spending in cities. And we can do it. We can have bird and people-friendly cities. We can live together in harmony, have those green places that make us feel good, and have a bird nesting or two as well. So that's it. Thank you. Merci, Niawen.
Oh, Barbara, what a wild journey. Thank you so much. And you're right. I mean, I love frogs from yesterday, but birds can fly, which is a pretty neat party trick. So glad we got the chance to feature some incredible stories about them today. And now we're going to dive in with questions all about you and your amazing work. So Gems World Academy, we're coming to you guys live in a minute. YouTubers, keep those questions coming. Let's see, how long do the backpacks last for? The little ones that you're putting on them, is there a time limit for them?
That's a great question. So there's a couple answers. One is my tiny, tiny birds need to have a tiny, tiny backpack. And as we'll learn, the bigger the backpack is, the bigger the battery can be. So the bigger the bird, the longer the backpack can last. I can also adjust it. So if I want that backpack to last, let's say, a year and a half, because I'm interested in a bird that's going to go down south and then come back up, and I'd like to see both of that, I can make it so that signals are happening only every 2 minutes or so. So it'll last longer. It's the same as using your phone or your tablet. The more you use it, the faster the battery goes down. But I can't do that for those birds that I'm trying to find every day. And I'll tell you why. If I hear a signal and I dash through the woods to find that bird, and then I have to sit there and wait for 2 minutes for that signal to come again, that bird's already gone. So for those ones that I'm trying to find every day and track, I tend to have that signal go out every 6 or 7 seconds, just so it's like, doing Marco Polo. If Marco is only calling Polo every 2 minutes or every 7 seconds, you'll be easier able to find them. So it can vary.
Fantastic and detailed answer. And by the way, first ever reference to Marco Polo, the world's greatest pool game in the history of exploring by the seat of your pants. So thank you for that too, Barbara. We're going to head to our Chicago class, Gems World Academy. So many hands up. Come on in. Hey.
What can we do to help birds?
Yes, my favorite question.
That is my favorite. Yeah. So the two main things that are killing our birds in cities that you can help do tomorrow is, number one, if you have a kitty cat, keep it inside. Give it lots of extra pets and snuggles. It'll be just fine. Number two is your windows. Unfortunately, birds, when they see a window, one, they either don't know it's a window, so they think they can go through it, or two, they see something that reflected that they would look like a tree and they try to go and land on it. Either way, birds hit it and get killed. And we have about 1 billion birds being killed every year in North America by windows. You can solve that 2 ways. One is a quick fix. Highlighters have ultraviolet light, but birds can help see. So you can go and make fancy drawings on your windows, which your parents won't be able to see. Still tell your parents, but it won't make that much of a difference. And the birds can do that. But the problem is this, you have to do quite often because it washes or wears away. Another thing you can do is put little dots or drawings on your windows, especially ones where you've had birds hit before. So that's another great thing you can do. Then there's things like reducing the amount of plastic that you use, especially things that you throw away, because those ends up in the tummy of our birds, especially our seabirds. And, help support shade-grown coffee, but you might be a couple of years too young for that. But that's an amazing question. And honestly, especially for the windows, every window you help protect is going to be less birds killed.
I love that we got that question to begin. We also had a great answer earlier in the broadcast about a group that's keeping their cat inside to keep their birds safe. So cats eat a lot of birds every year. If you keep your cat inside, if you make sure it's not eating birds on your lawn and your backyard, that does go a long way. Cats kill several 100 million birds a year. So it's a big impact from our sort of household super predators. So I love that question, guys. Thanks, Gems World Academy. Another great one. How many bird calls can you recognize personally, Barbara? Are you like a hearing savant? What's going on?
That is something like it's not like learning to ride a bike, right? Where you learn it once and you're good to go. So I would say I would comfortably recognize between probably 80 to 100 bird species now. If I would be going and doing surveys in different places, I would have to go and do practices. But birds have accents. And I learned this actually when I was up in your way in Newfoundland, Jesse. The birds that I knew that sang a certain way, I went up there and they had a completely different accent. And I needed to learn the Newfie accent. And sometimes if I go out west, I have to learn different accents. So it's something I'm always working on, but it is a lot of fun. And there is, as I mentioned, a great free app called Merlin, Merlin. And it's amazing. You can turn it on, walk around, and it'll show you what birds are singing and show their pictures on your phone or on your iPad. So check it out.
I think I'll have to go get that. That is such a higher volume of birds that you can recognize than I anticipated. Our audience on YouTube says, holy cow, too. So way to go. Good for you. I got to stress for our audience, too. We get a lot of questions like that. Like, how many things do you know? How many things? And usually it's like, oh, well, like 2 or 4. Like, we look it up. And the fact that you went straight to 80 to 100 is amazing. We're going to take a couple more questions before we wrap up. Time flies and you're having fun in these broadcasts, but our Chicago crew, come on back in and take us away. Hey.
Okay, so you know the devices that you put on the birds, do any of the devices have cameras on them?
Ooh.
Oh, such a great question. Mine do not. There is some amazing videos on YouTube that you can watch of eagles flying, which have cameras on their back, which is super cool because you can see how they fly. And sometimes some hawks can like fly and fit themselves in really tiny spaces. So definitely check that out. My birds are unfortunately too tiny to have a camera on them, but I would love it if they could.
Yeah, this is a question we get a lot for various animals, so it really does depend on size. It would be amazing to have a dragonfly with a little camera on it. We're getting that technology better and better. We're not quite there yet, but it is quite amazing. Kids, honestly, when I was your age, the technology that we had for putting things on animals was like in its infancy, barely even in the same league as what we have today. So it's a really exciting time to be interested in nature. Now, I'm going to take one more from you guys, and I want to stress, if you have additional questions, write them down. I'll get them to Barbara. We'll get you answers. We want to flush out your incredible bird curiosity, but we've only got time for one more question. So that's the nature of broadcast, I'm afraid. Come on in and take us with one more, and then we'll wrap up there, folks. Hey.
There you go.
How would we know if the birds are hurt?
Ooh.
And also, I have a pet bird myself.
Oh, yeah, she does.
You have a bird yourself?
She has a pet bird. I have a pet
Oh,
cat.
cool.
She has a bird. She has a cat.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Well, how do you know a bird is injured?
Great question. So I don't know so much about the birds that you might have at home, like your birds in your cages, but if you see a wild bird, a great way to know that if you find it, like number one, if you find a hurt bird, it's often if it can't fly, especially if it's trying to fly and it can't. Often what happens if it hits a window, it can break a bone in its chest, which allows its wings to move. So it tries to fly and it can't. Or if you see that it's kind of falling over, unfortunately, often they hit their heads, so they get really confused and hurt. So the best thing if you can do is, and of course, if you see any blood, unfortunately, if it's been attacked by a cat. So if you find a bird, the best thing to do is to put it in a box of a towel or some paper towel or an old blanket and put it in a quiet, dark place and try to keep it warm, because a lot of our little birds, they can't make themselves warm, especially when they're hurt. So you can put like a hot water bottle or one of those handhold warmers in there under the blankets to keep it warm and just keep it quiet. And then there's people called bird rehabilitators. So they're like doctors for birds, which you can bring them to. Not all cities have them. I'm pretty sure Chicago would have one, because unfortunately, Chicago is one of our worst places for birds getting hit by windows. So you can take it out and take care of them there. So yeah, that's how you can tell if a bird is hurt and how you can try to help it.
It's a really thoughtful question and a great answer, Barbara. Thank you so much for such a fun broadcast today. Is there any last message you want to share with our kids about birds, going out and doing citizen science, how to preserve them? Anything you want to leave us with before we bring in our classes to say thank you and farewell?
All of the above. Any information that you can go out and you can get about birds is actually really helpful. You can go out there, you can find them, you explore them, and just take a minute and enjoy them. Think about them, share what you learn. and just stay happy and keep birding and take care of yourselves and the nature around you, and it'll give you back 100 times more joy and happiness. And thank you for all your questions, because you guys are going to make the difference.
You sure are, especially with questions like our classes today. You guys really rock. Get out in nature if you can. When you're done your school day, head out to a park with your family, friends, whatever. There's so much to explore, even if you're in the heart of a major city like Chicago. I'm going to bring in our Gems World Academy folks to say a big thank you and farewell. YouTubers, if you want to yell out at home in your classroom, annoy the principal, please do. But Gems, we'll bring you in to say goodbye. Thank you so much, everybody.